One, maybe. Here we go. Hello.
Hello.
Maybe.
Whoa. The cat's sitting on my face.
Hold on. Let me make sure it's all live on here. It says it's waiting for me, but we say that we are broadcasting.
There was an error loading your app. There appears
It's
to be
going.
something wrong with it. All right.
It's going. There we are. Okay, so we're good. Hello. Oh, shoot. Hold on. I need to pause. Nope. Okay, there. Unmuted. Okay, everyone. Okay, we'll do the normal introduction, and then we can just start normally. So, welcome to the Welcome to the 2-month review podcast. Welcome to the 2-month review podcast. This is our weekly podcast in which we talk about a particular book, bit by bit, section by section, going through it, enjoying it, talking about what's interesting, having great conversations about literature and life and everything else. And for this season, we're going over Georgi Gospodinov's The Physics of Sorrow, which was published a few years ago. We talked about part 1 last week with Tom Roberge, and this week, Brian and I are joined by Caitlin Baker from the University Bookstore in Seattle. So welcome, Caitlin.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Caitlin. So glad to have a face to go with the name and all the fun tweets. So really looking forward to chatting with you today.
Is it, you mean a face to go with the cat picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's biting my arm, so.
I feel like every week when we do this, there needs to be one cat moment. Like there's at least like, we all have cats, so they're all like around us as we do these things. So anyway, so this week we're going to be going over part 2 of the book, which is a whole lengthy 14 pages. It's called Against an Abandonment, the Case of M. And it's basically, I'll just summarize it now and then we'll get into questions and talk about everything. But basically it's the author essentially like creating a case for why the Minotaur has been wrong throughout Greek history and mythological history and history as a whole, and being treated as a monster when he's a human who is part bull. It's not his fault. He's in a labyrinth, the sadness that goes along with that, and sort of defending him before some kind of imaginary court. So anyways, we can talk about all of that, but Caitlin, I wanted to ask you a few questions first. So
Sure.
how did you get into promoting international literature? Because you're one of the strong voices on Twitter who is constantly like talking about international books around the world. You're very interested and engaged with this kind of these kind of titles. So I was curious about how you got involved.
I was trying to think about that the other day. I think it kind of came before college, maybe in high school, but definitely before college. Just wanting to hear somebody read something different. Obviously, I spent a lot of time with Kafka when I was in 10th grade and 11th grade, and kind of carried around the collected short stories for a while, and then got into Latin American literature. And in college, I took a class for a while on third world women writers. I also did a lot of theater, and of course, a lot of theater I did in theater history comes from translations, either a lot of German or other languages. And I just remember being at a Walden book in a mall in Schenectady. Jesus! I know.
It's like a nightmare of mine.
Like narrow, like three books, and there was like a lot of Yende, which I didn't read, initially, but just kind of grabbing onto it. I think just to read different voices, and promote the different voices, and not make it like a scary thing to people. My displays in the store some of them are purely international literature. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a 2-month review one right up now. But
we used in our NEA grant.
Yeah.
We used your picture, actually, literally.
Oh, okay. And that's fine. It's cool. My main displays of new fiction tables all have sorry, the cat's biting me. They all have a kind of mixture of what's new if somebody is coming into the store for like the newest hot bestseller from one of the big 5, and then some kind of mixed in small press books. And people will just pick things up, and things like Thomas Johansson bestseller was a surprising very easy hand sell, I think. Wow. Because of Iceland. It was just easy. Like Iceland, okay.
And those people never came back to your store.
No, I think they do. I think they definitely do.
I'm just kidding.
there are a number of customers who read. With being right next to a major university, we have a number of customers who kind of stop in and read a lot of translated literature and look to see what's new. But I guess just to kind of not separate it from everything else, not keep it in some dark corner, or keep it purely on its own display. So, yeah.
Well, I'm very impressed because I think when I was in the 10th grade, I was learning how to smoke out of an apple. It was probably, I think.
I did that as well. I did that.
The fact you were reading books in high school is like, oh man, that's incredible.
I did graduate from Quaker boarding school, so there was a lot of sneaking out, and I looked very innocent. And one of my best friends was from Spain, so we got away with a ton of shit. That my brother got caught for when he went the next year. I think I just had that look of innocence, you know. Kind of, sorry, it's biting me. Okay,
did you work at the store with Jay Weaver as well?
I briefly. Jay and I crossed over briefly. I was working predominantly in the kids section at that time, and he was up in the office doing ordering. Now I'm up in the office as much as I can be, ordering books, backlist, and all that. I'm kind of running down to the floor and setting up displays. But I do know Jay,
Yeah, because for anyone who doesn't know, Jay Weaver was the head buyer for a number of years at University Bookstore. He's really smart, really great guy, very interested in international literature as well. And his wife, Danmi Choi, is a translator from Korean and does a lot of like experimental Korean poetry, and writes her own poetry and is spectacular. So that's I kind of wondered if you guys had that chance to like bond over your international literature loves.
I think not a great deal.
Okay.
Just because he left to get his education. I think he ended up going to school to become a teacher.
Yeah.
Soon after I started.
So okay. Very cool. So I have a question for you related to the book. Had you read this book before starting the 2-month review?
No, I had not. I have my copy, which has my little sticker on it. It was from 3 years ago almost. Preview copy. So it's I've had it in my stock and meant to read it and heard great things about it. And I'm like, hey, here's my chance. So that's
perfect. So have you read? You haven't read beyond this moment though, right? You've read to like 72.
I did read the next section, but then I didn't want to read. But
overachiever. I knew it. She's an overachiever.
I know, and I wasn't going to read too much more just because I didn't want it to influence what I was doing.
Yeah, so, which makes sense.
With this piece, because this piece is only 14 pages long.
It is very short, and I knew like when we put this all together, like it works out perfectly in terms of the number of episodes we want to have and the number of parts that are in the book. But at the same time, like this one is one where it's like incredibly brief and condensed, whereas last week's one was a little bit longer. But that's kind of the fun, I think, of like doing this project this way, is that sometimes the pieces are really short and you get a breather. You get to talk about like, why is it separated out this shortly? Hi, Isaac. I can hear you, Isaac.
Shh, be quiet. We're having a talk right now, okay? She wants to play Play-Doh. Yeah.
Does she want to talk about children and mythology?
Yeah, this section's about eating kids. So go play Play-Doh. It's probably better for you this time. Yeah. Okay.
Don't eat Play-Doh.
If it's a homemade, is it the homemade kind or the kind from the can?
From the can. Yeah.
My kids make that homemade crap all the time. It's not just Play-Doh anymore now. It's slime. They make slime, which is basically
that's right.
It's like goop. It's like what I would call silly putty, but it's like that consistency or like a little bit different. And they make it endlessly out of any number of different ingredients. They just make batches upon batches of it and plug up every single like Tupperware that you have with slime and leave it all over. And sometimes it stains things, and it's just disgusting and stupid. It's bad. It's like fidget spinners, which they now don't care about, but we're like the most important thing ever. Slime is that for the moment. Yeah, it's great. Awesome.
The slime was popular when I was a kid. but so it's making a nice comeback. That's good.
But I feel like slime was like, I remember slime being like from that Nickelodeon show where it would dump like all the slime on you. This is different than that. It's like more thick. It doesn't. It can't really pour on you the way that the slime from that Nickelodeon show. What was that called? It was
It was
Dare.
You can't do that on television. It's something
Dare,
like
Double Dare. Oh yeah, that was the one with Alanis Morissette. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyways, so what do you think of the book so far?
With my grandma. I really like it. I had to restrain myself from not reading more, and more after the part I read after that, and now I can continue to read more. It's really cool. I like how it's like kind of bringing back some of my love of mythology from like 6th grade.
I know, it's amazing how much I forgot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, who's?
I had to get out my old Edith Hamilton. Well, it's not the same one I've had all along. That's probably long gone and disintegrated. But you kind of, I think you guys probably also studied mythology in 6th grade or thereabouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 6th grade exactly.
Kind of, yeah. I went to a rural school in Midwest in like Michigan where like what you studied in 6th grade was potatoes, like in the shape of potatoes. So I don't think we had any mythology, to be honest. Like, I'm lucky we're alive. I'm lucky I'm alive, to be honest.
Yeah, and then we got to watch Jason the Argonauts, which is very cool. And then, the scene, yeah, that was part of the whole. I don't know, but it was great. But so I'm thinking out my old Edith Hamilton and, kind of reading some of the myths that I haven't read in a while.
Yeah, and that's what I actually really liked about this section was that we had talked last week about knowing the Minotaur myth or what we remembered about it or didn't remember and things that we had seen online and whatever else. And this is a good section for like sort of like taking that moment in which a normal reader, like you guys are very educated and intelligent and know a certain amount of myth stuff, even if you don't remember that. But I can imagine a lot of readers are just unaware, right? Or like not really they don't remember clearly at all, whatever. And this section does take that and addresses it and is like, here are a bunch of iterations of the Minotaur myth. Here's a bunch of different things that kind of lock together. Here's he was portrayed in various points in time. And I think that's really useful for like someone who's just reading the book and doesn't have any sort of like background of like of reading myths.
Yeah, I was curious. I didn't look it up, but I was wondering if the etymology of grab the bull by the horns, if that comes from this myth or not.
Oh.
Because all the pictures show him grabbing the bull's head and manipulating it or whatever. I wonder if that comes from this myth or not.
I always thought that was from like the running of the bulls in Pamplona.
Sure, maybe, or that too, but
probably not true.
So this is a great one where someone can make fun of us later, like, you're an idiot. Obviously it comes from, well, all right, sorry for throwing something out there.
I know that if I try and Google the answer to this, my computer will crash. So let someone just... anyone who's listening, by the way, as always, we are broadcasting this live on YouTube, and there are people watching us. If you know where that phrase comes from or want to look it up, just put it in the chat section. We'll talk about every single question or comment you guys put in the chat tonight, I promise. So...
And be very demeaning, like end it with ... you idiot or something like that, because I think that's the best way to really get dialogues going. So
I told Georgi to come on here and just ask us whatever dumb question that we will never be able to answer might be. So we'll see. That would be fun. But you, Brian, you said that you had pulled out a myth book actually.
Yeah, I bought this one. Just one second, Isaac. Here you go. Plato. I got this from the Saratoga Library for $2. It's called The Golden Fleece, and it's basically Jason and the Argonauts and all that kind of stuff. But towards the back, it just shoehorns in a bunch of other myths as well. And so I'll read a couple paragraphs about the Athenian version of the Minotaur story, just since. The 14 pages we have here is all from the Minotaur being human. This shows how wonderful and innocent and pure the Athenians are. So the heroes of the quest. The greatest king of the world at that time was Minos, king of Crete. Minos had sent his son to Athens to make peace and friendship between his kingdom and the kingdom of Aegeus. I'm going to call it Aegeus. I hope that's right.
Good enough.
But the people of Athens slew the son. Why am I laughing? There's another dead kid.
We're going to talk about dead kids in a minute.
But the people of Athens slew the son of King Minos, and because Aegeus had not given him the protection that a king should have given a stranger, come upon such an errand, he was deemed to have some part in guilt of his slaying. Minos, the great king, was wroth, and he made war on Athens, wreaking great destruction upon their country and the people. Moreover, the gods themselves were wroth with Athens. They punished the people with famine, making even the rivers dry up. The Athenians went to the oracle and asked Apollo what they should do to have their guilt taken away. Apollo made answer that they should make peace with Minos and fulfill all his demands. All this Theseus now heard, learning for the first time that behind the wars and troubles in Athens, there was a deed of evil that Aegeus, his father, had some guilt in. So that's why they're all guilty. The demands of King Minos made upon Athens were terrible. He demanded that the Athenians should send into Crete every year 7 youths and 7 maidens as a price for the life of his son. And these youths and maidens were not to meet death merely, nor were they to be reared in slavery. They were to be sent that a monster called the Minotaur might devour them. So I'll read some more of this on our next post, but I'll just stop there. That's why the Athenians have to send their things in and yada yada yada, because they killed his son.
It says in there that they send them every year, right?
Yeah, and it's every 7 or 9
7 or
years.
9. I guess that's disputed too, or like different myths use different numbers.
So this one might be alternative facts, fake news, but the story, the gist of it's there.
Yeah, I think the Edith Hamilton basically said the same thing. It was like every 7 years, the youths come in or sent. So it's basically the same, very similar story in Hamilton.
I think one of the most interesting parts of this little section is the reference to the fact that there are very few children in mythology. And like it's been a long time. Like, and I've read a lot of things less like the Hamilton or like the Golden Fleece, and more of like the plays that existed that are about mythology, like Jason and Argonauts, or I guess Oedipus is another example of that. But whatever, like the different myths, like in play form, were a lot of the ways that I read about these myths, or like in one of those kind of weird generic anthologies. But looking back, it does seem striking that there are very few children, which is what he mentions in here, that there are kids that people are generated at various points in time, but they're very rarely children. They're always like more advanced than that. And when they are, they're treated pretty horribly.
Yeah, don't they have terrible relationships with their fathers? And almost every, like they have to go off and somebody else has to raise them or something. And then there's always like daddy issues in all of them.
Yeah. And there's a line on page 67 that says, apparently where everybody is acting childish, real children are not unwelcome. So, I mean, that's the end part, the child unfriendly of the Greek mythology. I thought that was really interesting. I'd never picked up on that when I was in 6th grade.
I didn't either.
Oh, that's cool. like children born from,
Yeah, I just always thought it was cool, monsters and heroes and tragedy and,
Yeah, it's like comic book in mythological form, or in like comic book in like raised elevation. Like it's those structures and those things. But that is really interesting because I never thought about it either. And like it is true that they always act with like grudges, and like their grudges like lead to smiting entire villages, or like causing like someone like is it Poseidon gets pissed at Minos about the bull, so he like has his wife lust after a bull. Like that's so childish. That's like a 4th grade joke. It's like your mom likes to fuck bulls. Like that's like the worst sort of joke, and that's just part of the structure of this entire myth, which leads to a human bull baby being forced to live in a dark labyrinth by itself because it's not quite human enough.
Yeah. Plays 3rd base for the Cubs, probably. Yeah. Give me that bull baby. Yeah, there's like I really do like the thread of just children all throughout. Even though it's only 14 pages, there's children everywhere. I was kind of underlining all over the place all the kid stuff that kept popping up in here.
I thought it was interesting. So Brian, this is actually another one of those parts too, where you said you've been flipping through and noticed the images, and this is the first section in which you break out of the standard way. I mean, this breaks out of like the standard way of writing a novel in two ways. Like the first section does have more or less a kind of narrative about like the grandfather. Sure, it's told through the point of view of a child who can go into their grandfather's memories and sort of see them and whatever and see what they don't tell. But at the same time, it's like telling one sort of story. In this case, that's done, and we have like a mythological court or like a theoretical court or whatever you want to call it, in which the narrator is suddenly like the author is sort of promoting this idea that the Minotaur is innocent, not like this grand monster. And then all of a sudden you get those pictures. Brian, say something.
Hey, here are the pictures that he's talking about. There you go. Of various ways Theseus is grabbing the bull by the horns.
And that's another time that it breaks out of the idea of what a novel typically is. I also really like, before I ask you about that, the other thing I really like about that is the idea that most of the ideas, the stories, the myths about the Minotaur deal with his death, and very little with his birth and his death, but very little in between there. Like it's basically those images, like of him being murdered by Theseus, with Ariadne's like string thing, which you made fun of last week, which I still like. It's in here again. That not only does she give Theseus the string and the sword, and is like, "Here's how you can kill my brother, and now we'll be in love forever." But then she does that, and then Theseus is just like, "Peace, come back to Athens." Like, thanks, don't care.
Typical male.
Yeah, Jesus. Athenians are the worst.
Yeah, they really are. My goodness.
I think the line right above the pictures, which says that if literature constantly returns to the Minotaur's monstrous birth, then visual art is hypnotized by his death. I thought that was interesting too, because I don't know, are there pictures? Somebody can tell us in the comments of his birth, but that doesn't sound pleasant, I'm sure. But there's a lot of pictures of his death.
No, the one related to that, the one other picture, this one, of like his mother like nursing him is really interesting for like a birth or young baby aspect to it. But otherwise, like, yeah, it is. And when I think about the Minotaur, I always think about it, the Minotaur being killed. Like that is the first and foremost thing.
And you think of it as a monster.
Yeah.
Like I'd never considered, it says, down at the bottom of 63, the body is human. You're killing a human being.
That was my. Yep.
Yeah, like.
Yeah.
That was my number one quote for this week that I had starred was that one. Was like, yeah, you're killing a human being, Theseus. Like that's intense.
Because it was funny. I was going through this Golden Fleece book, and Jason was raised by a centaur, right, which is the horse body human head.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also mentions that the centaur are protecting the seventh circle or something like that. But yeah, just the thought of if it has a bull head and a human body, it's a monster. But if it has animal body and human head, it's treated as dignified and human. So it's kind of which way are you looking at it, right?
Right. And that is.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That is one of the things that's really cool about this chapter too, is the fact that it does bring together all these different tellings of the myth, and throughout time and throughout like different artwork. So you have Dante's Inferno in the 7th level of hell with the Minotaur and with the centaurs and with those people. That becomes like a new sort of piece of our constellation of how the Minotaur has been treated and how myth is related to contemporary fiction and contemporary ways of thinking. And I think that that's really cool with this chapter. It's like a very learned chapter that doesn't feel overly pedantic at any point in time.
Yeah, I was. There's the passage about child unfriendly, with it talks about the absence of children in Greek mythology. And the first thing I thought was Saturn, which I guess is Kronos, right? They're the same, depending on which culture. Sure. Is Saturn Roman? Probably. I'm being dumb again. But there's the painting, I want to say it's Goya that did the painting on a wall of like his house or something called Saturn Eating His Young.
Yeah.
If you ever Google this image, it is the most like disgusting, frightening looking picture ever. It's super dark. You see like this naked guy that's really big, and he's got his hands on the torso of a body with the head, and he's like ripping it into his mouth. It is, I can't see it there, but
That doesn't work so well.
Okay. But I was thinking that in my mind as you're hearing this, like, oh, and every time she had a kid, he would eat it, and like it's told in a very kind of fanciful way, like just kind of nonchalant way or whatever. But when you think about eating all your children, it is like absolutely horrific and disgusting and awful, right? Like, and that painting, if you look up Saturn eating his young, it kind of like the look on his face and how terrifying it is to have this large looming thing devouring its own young.
Is super intense.
And then it goes to that paragraph at the end. I had an aunt who always threatened to eat me up every time she came to visit. And then by the end of it, she didn't have any children. She must have devoured them. But,
I love that line.
Yeah, I kept picturing that painting and how, like, yes, that would be terrifying. Like, as an adult, you might just be joking, like, oh, I'm gonna eat your little toes.
Yeah,
like being cute or something. And then you imagine, like, oh my gosh, she's gonna bite my toes off.
It's like taking that sort of like, I mean, it's kind of weird because it can go in both ways. Like you can have the idea that that we're doing this, like, oh, we'll eat your little toes, isn't that cute? And it's sort of a nod back to these crazy myths, but like very much infantilizing them and making them like less scary. Or like those scary ass myths became reduced down into this. That like you lived in a world in which you'd say like, I'd eat your toes, and you probably would. Like that was a possibility.
Well, isn't it like even true like in the mammal worlds? Like a mother will keep the father predator away from its young because it'll kill it. Like a cute little bear cub stays with his mom because the dad will like, I will devour you because you're going to be in my territory. I don't want you to usurp me or whatever. Like that's what we've come from, right? Like it's in us back here somewhere. So it makes sense that they have these myths of the young being devoured by a more powerful male or something. It's not that surprising, but it just feels so savage when you actually think about it.
Yeah. What do you guys think of like the joke part about the buying the story of the picture of the child on top of the rice?
Oh God, that was pretty gross. That was like, oh my God. You can see how that kind of fits in with a kid afraid that the aunt's going to eat him up. Because, for her to kind of literally carry that on, I'm like, oh my God, you're going to like bake it? At first I read that and was like, no shit, she didn't bake a baby. Because you kind of get read it that way too. Where she's like kind of cooked the baby and like, here you go, that's what you get for constantly telling me this when I was a kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to take your little family joke and make it literal. Isn't that cool? You're like, no. In the context of everything else, probably not. Probably not. Man, I think it's an interesting little section.
Well, yeah, again, it just kind of flips things on its head because it's, of course, the Minotaur doesn't have a voice because it doesn't have it's a bullhead. It doesn't, it says moo. There is no voice for the Minotaur that we can necessarily hear, and so of course it just gets seen as a monster. And then this whole thing is about, well, there's two sides to everything. What about, like, I don't want to be down here. I'm abandoned. I have no, like, my father threw me down here. I have no choice. And then you, like, stuff people down. You don't give me any food, and then you, like, bring people down here. What am I supposed to do? Not eat them? Like, what choice do I have?
I do have to say, this is the second season in a row in which with a baby in my life looming, like that we're talking about dead babies and like babies put in labyrinths and like things that are like super not appropriate.
Well, the baby's gonna be fine. It's the father of the baby that we have to worry about.
Yeah,
it's you, Chad.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Fair point.
So I'm gonna get a baby-sized rock and swaddle it, and if you're gonna cause any problems,
you just swallow it.
Eat the rock.
I'm 2 for 2 on not putting my children in closets though, so I'm good. So far, I'm batting 1,000. Like you can screw up and you're still 667. That's a good average, I think.
That's a great average,
right? No. Oh, don't make jokes about children in closets, I think.
So is there another thing that's kind of threaded through here with like the sins of the father, like the children being innocent but being punished for the sins of the father and all the different examples through here? Because I know, like, in the bottom of 62, I just noticed I underlined this part that says, but isn't the Minotaur merely the fruit of such sin, not a perpetrator, a victim, the most long-suffering victim? And then I think a little bit...
Oh, yeah, I had that underlined, too.
Yeah, later in 67, later the myth will transform the child into a monster so as to justify the sin of his abandonment, the sin against all children, whom we will abandon in the future.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like there's the sins of the father. There's also this sort of passing down through time of that action as well, and like the repetition of it. So like a lot of those myths do deal with like, you're sort of joking about it, but a lot of the myths do deal with like father-son relationships or father-children relationships. So many of them do. Like even there's Daedalus in here, and is referenced, also has some father issues or son issues. But there's a bit about crafting the wooden cow, which I mentioned last week. I didn't realize it was going to come up in this section, but that one of the variations of this myth is that for Minos's wife, which I'm not going to pronounce, to have sex with the bull, they make a fake bull for her to like get inside of, which is essentially the Trojan horse, and like that gets repeated in myth too. So you have this kind of like that, one of those ideas of like the Freudian idea of myth, where like that exists, or the Jungian idea, like that template exists, and it gets passed down in just different iterations. So even though there's the sins of the father and they get passed down in these various ways, and in this case with the Minotaur, it's putting him in a labyrinth to hide the shame within this weird way. And in other points, it's like eating the child, it's sending the child off to like, you know, fly high to the sky until their wings fall off. All those different variations have like father-son issues, and they just keep getting passed down in new variations throughout time and throughout storytelling.
Well, like you see parallels too, like with remember, is it Polyphemus, or I don't know if it's Polyphemus or Cyclops, whatever his name is, but when he first traps the men in there, and he's like a giant, he starts eating them, right? And that's what, like, oh, we got to get the hell out of here. He's going to eat us all. And you know, and he's like, I don't remember what happened with his father's Poseidon, I think. And again, there's like some father issues with that, but yeah, I mean, they like to eat people apparently, and like they were like little, so you know, somebody big, somebody small, and eating the little and devouring, and yeah.
Yep. This is a whole 40 minutes talking about eating people.
Yeah. I don't know much about poetry, but I did look up hexameter for the
does it work?
That was kind of fun. Yeah, it does work.
Okay.
Yeah, I even broke it up into the little dashes with the numbers and stuff like that. Well, the poetry people are gonna slaughter me. Yeah, you know your little dash things you guys do, that cute crap that you guys do, enjambment, like, whatever those words you guys like to use are. No, like it works. So good job on the translation to get all of the syllables in there.
I thought that Angela did that right, but then I didn't ever check it. One thing that comes up though, that's right, it's not in there, but it's before that. There's a reference to Gostin of Arles, 17th century. This is again Gostin from the beginning. I don't think that's a real person.
No, I was trying to Google Gostin. I didn't know if, but it's also the epigraph from the beginning is on that, which I thought was going to.
But there's
sure they were hidden.
There's twice in here, right?
Yeah, the beginning has two. One of them is the 17th century, and the other one is something called like Novels and Nothingness, which sounds much more modern. But I don't think it's a real person at all.
But he does have a short story that I tried to print out, and then it printed out the first page, but not the second page at all.
Really?
I was going to read it. Called Gostin.
Oh. Gorgy does.
Right, Gorgy does.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I thought you meant Gostin from the 17th century.
No, I was trying to like, who is this? What is this?
Yeah,
is
yeah.
This real?
Sort of like let people like figure this one out as it goes along, but it's worth noting twice that that's come out in each of these sections, and it's sort of dropped in there in the most naturalized fashion of like viruses, and it has like that quote, "Billy goats and lilies courted all around me. I cried out afeared, dear Lord, have mercy. Such a sin simply cannot be. God's right hand he placed in between. O world, from a second Sodom ye are redeemed," which seems fairly legitimate. Like I wouldn't, if you just put that in front of me, I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's a person from whenever. but I really don't think it is. We shall see.
And then there's the other one, which goes against the natural order the mysterious Gaussians 17th century insisted upon. There is order here, and God makes no mistake. Fly and ram, tulip and oak, do not copulate.
Yeah.
Was that one supposed to be from Gostin as well?
I think so.
Okay.
We do have one comment online which says that we should have a new T-shirt idea, a new T-shirt for Open Letter. It just says "We are Minotaur."
There you go.
It's the big Minotaur on the back. I'd wear that.
I think that one, or instead of kill your darlings, just eat your babies. And you could have a picture of Saturn eating his young, like that absolutely horrific image, and
just a crazy labyrinth hashtag by Open Letter.
Forget bird by bird. That's like we kill your darling. We eat our babies. Yeah.
I think you could put it on like dinner plates. That would be a good one.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Here you go.
That's what I'm gonna get for you, Chad. I'm gonna get a onesie with Saturn eating his young on the.
Eat your babies.
Just to remind you, please don't eat me.
So succulent.
Jeez Louise.
This is
Oh jeepers! This took a dark turn, don't you know? Oh dear.
There's the other comment that Angela does have a background in music. So in terms of when she does the verses, Angela Rodell, who translated the book, is a musician. Her song, oh man, I meant to look up the name of it again tonight. Her song that we've been using for the 2-month review has a title that relates to this book. But she's a musician, and so her idea of like keeping the hexameter and like working with verses and working with that does make a lot of sense. That she would be attuned to that and into the different rhythms and syllabic structures and whatnot.
Yeah, it's super impressive because it's in heroic as well. So they all rhyme one after the other. So I have no idea how you make that work in a translation, but more power to you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
If I can get this to work, I can tell you what the name of her song is that we've been using. It is Stars and Babies.
No, are you serious?
Yep, that's the name of the song that opens up every one of these is Stars and Babies.
Serendipity. That's all coming together here. Okay.
Yep. So that's why, I saw that and I was like, I looked at her album list, the track list, and I was like, which song would be the most like 2-month review song for Physics of Sour? I was like, Stars and Babies, and played the beginning of it. And was like, yep, that's it. We've got it. This works. Right. So what do you think so far, Caitlin, on the book? If you can ignore the third section for a second.
Oh yeah, I'm totally ignoring the third section because we don't have it. No, I'm really enjoying it, and I wish I'd read it back about 3 years ago when it probably arrived in my mailbox.
Busted! Oh no!
No, my God, it has a little tag on it. Let's see. There we go.
Those are our galleys.
I've got the galley. Yes,
it's the book with the sticker.
Yes. So I've had it for 3 years, and I'm just reading it now.
I really like the trajectory of this book, to be honest, like in terms of its career, its sales, or whatever you want to call it. Because like a lot of people, we sent out a lot of copies. Since we had published him at Delkey and I knew his work and was really excited about his books and about doing this book, I knew that there'd be a certain number of people who would really gravitate towards it at the beginning. And yet it's been clear that over time, like more and more people have picked it up like you did. Like they got it, they might not have read it immediately because there's no like necessity to finish it right that moment. But then over time they've read it, and more often we get people contacting us being like, I just finally got around to reading this book, and this book is fucking amazing. And why didn't I read this before? I'm like, I don't know. But like that's cool because it just keeps building and building and building. And it's one of these books of ours that keeps like having a sort of engine on why it like sells and finds a new audience continuously and sort of fulfills our mission in that sense of what we'd like to do with our books.
Well, I also like taking a book that's been out for a while and making it into kind of a bestseller in the store.
Yeah.
There's a book that came out from Other Press a few years ago, and I had read it, and I was just like, this is pretty cool. And I sold about 50 copies
Dang.
within about just like 9 months or something. And the book had not it hadn't been in our store inventory in a couple of years.
Which book is that?
And this was Three Horses by
DeLuca, right?
Yes, DeLuca. So Jeff Waxman had sent me a bunch when he worked for other press. And I was like,
right.
This is pretty cool. It was, just, hey, you put a staff rec under a book and it sells. Almost always.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
this is probably a very dumb question, but do you push harder, like the books that you personally like yourself?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, some books, definitely. I mean, I had a copy, I had to do like an hour cashier shift on Friday, and I was like, the invented part is sitting in front of me while I do this. Like, I had a little pop-up tag in the top of the book. And it sat there all weekend. Hopefully it sold. But it's one of my staff recs. But I definitely try to push the books that I like better because, people are coming in for whatever they saw reviewed in New York Times or NPR is really big in our store. So whatever they've heard and can't remember that they saw reviewed in NPR, that will be, people come in for that. So I try to push the other books. If we're out of a book, so somebody's come in, I'm like, let me tell you what about these other books.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can hand sell a book that way.
So you're going to you're totally getting a review copy of Brian's book.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, send it.
Will do.
It'll be a while, but it'll come eventually.
Yeah. Take your multivitamins. That way we're all alive when it comes out. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh man.
Well, as long as somebody's not in office.
Yeah, it'll be right in the middle of that, won't it? Still. Yeah, you know what? That's a good timing for your book, Brian. Is that it's prior to the next election cycle.
There we go.
Election cycles are bad for book selling.
Are they really?
For fiction.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's distracted.
It was weird at our store because after the election, the day after the store, the whole city of Seattle was, like a ghost town.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bizarre. But then fiction sales seemed to do pretty good in the store because I think people just wanted something to get out of what was going on and to distract themselves.
1984 and the Anarchist Cookbook.
Yeah.
I'm sure were the really
the
hot sellers.
Atlas Shrugged.
Oh God. Somebody has not reordered that book because somebody cannot stand Paul Ryan. Hey, people can special order it.
We have. There's going to be a podcast potentially. The next 3% podcast might involve books that you should carry in your store or not carry in your store based on what you believe should be carried in your store and sold. And that's one of the books that's kind of at the heart of that too.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Since I know Tom doesn't want to carry that book at all.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to carry it to the one person who might buy it. It's just
deprive them.
I was watching something. Maybe it was like King of the Hill or something like that, and he's cooking a steak for his son, and the dad touches it and goes, "See that right there? That's perfectly medium rare." Well, Dad, what do you do if somebody wants something well done? You politely and firmly ask them to leave. Like, so they come in for Atlas Shrugged or whatever. You could be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry we don't have it, but the door's right there, and you could get on Amazon once you're outside."
That's the other thing. I know it's constantly having to explain to people why they should shop at an indie bookstore.
Yeah.
And not in Amazon. And, the most well-meaning people are like, but I can just do this. And they think like they're doing you a favor. Or sometimes they'll mention Amazon and I'll be like, what? What is this? What is this thing? And, I live up the hill from the main headquarters, so I don't live far. But
no.
I just don't go down there.
Keep your enemies closer.
Very true. So I'm sorry, go on.
But that's a weird thing to kind of explain. I mean, recently, it's people have, fiction is one of our biggest departments, but then there's always like whatever big blockbuster, has it like the Fate and Fort Fury or whatever, Fire and Fury, whatever that thing was.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say. So does Amazon's? I mean, it doesn't matter that Amazon's in Seattle per se, because like any bookstore anywhere in America is dealing with the existence of Amazon. But like,
Right.
does it set you? Do you actively try and carry things like Physics of Sorrow to try and make the store more unique than what you would normally find on Amazon? Because if you just go browse on Amazon, I think what you're going to end up with are like really weird algorithmic produced results, right? They'll be like the most popular. Like if you had looked up Physics of Sorrow for whatever reason, it's not going to give that to you when you go on there. It's probably going to recommend like something that's vaguely related to Bulgaria or the Olympics or weightlifting.
Right, or something that is published.
Right, or
when Fire and Fury book came out, whatever. I think that's what it's called.
I think that's right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There was a ton of people were ordering it online, but getting some kind of weird Canadian history book.
That's perfect.
They were ordering that one instead. It's like there's a picture of Ramsey Tangelo on the cover. It's pretty easy, but they were doing that. But I think it's in an independent bookstore. You try to have staff recs. You have people on the staff who are very well versed in in different subjects like history or mystery, or so you can kind of pinpoint. And we have a huge kids section, so I think that's kind of difference that people can expect.
Right. I think it's cool too that you do have like the whole display of this book for the 2-month review. I think it's cool that anyone at your store, I hope, is listening to the podcast and like getting in on this. And I hope that they do feel like they should send us messages, send us emails. You can put our email right on there if you want on your sign. Just to like send us questions. The more interaction, the better. Like I really like the idea that this can be through your store and through stores like yours. Much more of like a hangout to talk about the books and myths or whatever, and less like an academic lesson, I guess. And I love the fact that you guys put that up there and put that display together, because it does feel more in that vein of more of like a book club, book hangout.
Yeah, that's why I put up the display to give people, hey, you can check this out. This is pretty cool, and these are the books they did in the past. You can listen to these. And I'm constantly recommending people, especially with the invented part, hey, listen to the monthly review on the invented part if you're having issues.
That's really like, this is
issues with the book, just issues in general.
Issues in general. No. No, and
after just 2 weeks with the invented part, my gum disease is cleared up.
I mean, I ate my baby and I feel much better now. So like, wow. Yeah. So, anyways, on that note,
on
that note, do you guys have a favorite line from this section?
I think one of mine. I think I already
read it again. I'd like to hear.
Okay.
I'd like to hear you read it.
Well, it was apparently where everybody is acting childish. Real children are unwelcome, and I thought that kind of brought back a lot of like, hey, wow, that's mythology.
I'll read a couple sentences on page 70. It says, "The Minotaur, no voice, no sound, no whimper or threat, nothing anywhere, not even in the hexameter of Homer, that Minotaur among poets, who in the long nights of his blindness wandered through the labyrinths of history, nor in Ovid the exile, who knew very well the fate of an outcast, nor in Virgil, nor in Pliny the Elder, nor in Aeschylus, Euripides, or Sophocles. No one gives voice to, no one preserves the voice of the Minotaur. It's easy to feel sorry for Icarus. It's easy to sympathize with Theseus, with Ariadne, even with old King Minos. No one pities the Minotaur."
I really like that section too. I like this one because it sort of has like the almost the awareness of the narrator in like a really specific way. But on 69, there's just one unusual detail. That's no chicken or turkey on top of the rice, but a baby, naked and alive. I almost said raw.
Oh my gosh.
Which I love, like that little segue of like the awareness of the narrator or the author interjection makes me very happy reading this. So, but anyway, so we've been going for a while. The next section is part 3. It's a lot longer. It goes from page 73 all the way to 118, and we'll be talking about this next Monday. So not tomorrow. Tomorrow would be February 26th, but the Monday after that, which is, I don't know, a date, March 4th, maybe? March 5th. So on March 5th at 9 p.m. Eastern, we'll be talking with Nick Buzansky, who used to work at Green Apple Books and now works at Book Culture, about this next section. Do either of you have anything you want to add, or plug your Twitter handles?
Oh, should I go? I'm Kate. Well, I joined at 3 a.m. one day, so it's Kate _on_the_loose. Sorry about that. So it's Kate. I was trying to play on my middle name, Kate on the loose.
It works.
Oh, I like it. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then mine's just at Brian Wood with an underscore at the end. So at Brian Wood _.
So you should follow both of them. You can stay on top of on the Open Letter one and on my one, which is just Chad W. Post, for information about the next guest, about the link to the next YouTube video. The podcast of this will go up on Thursday, as usual. As always, if you could give us a rating on iTunes, that's really helpful for getting more people out there or more people listening to it, and get us higher on the iTunes rating charts. You should, if you're in a bookstore, you should play these live through your bookstore PA system, which would be awesome.
Oh, that would be, yeah.
Just endless.
That's about as good as the time when I read a sex scene at a live reading at a Barnes and Nobles, and I didn't realize they put us right next to the children's reading area. And so it's like talking about like blowjobs and stuff, and there's just like kids, right? I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. This is awful. So do not play this in a bookstore, please. It's irresponsible. It's so irresponsible.
I once set up a reading for one of our authors at Delkey at a Barnes & Noble in Seattle, in fact, and they said that they only had 3 people who showed up to their reading, and 2 of them were homeless, and they were looking for warmth.
Yeah. We get a lot of those.
There's someone came in and took like a stack of The Stranger for to line their blankets. And they're just like, what did you do to me? I don't know. I also managed that year to set them up with a reading on Super Bowl Sunday. So it was overall like the worst tour I've ever put together in my life.
Did you ever read Mark Lehner's Gone with the Mind?
I've never read that one, no.
His mom is doing a reading series in the food court of a mall or something like that. And so she's like thanking everybody for showing up. And they're like, we're not here for the reading. We're on our lunch break. Like, there's like 4 people and they're all at Panda Express on their lunch break. Like, but thank you for being here anyways. We appreciate you being here. I feel like that's us. So.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, anyways, thanks to everyone who is watching tonight and for your questions. Caitlin, thank you very much for coming on and talking about this section.
Yes, it was wonderful to get to chat with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And this is like the first time we're meeting sort of in real life.
Yeah, we did meet a few years ago, I think. You were here like when AWP or maybe it was Alta was in Seattle.
It was AWP.
It was at Elliott Bay.
Yes.
Were you there? Yes.
Yes,
but that was like 3 or 4 years ago. AWP was in Seattle. Yeah,
it was probably it was probably 4. It was a while ago.
I think it was like 4. It was a while ago. And it was really quick. It was just like that night and then.
Exactly. I think that was the last AWP I've been to.
Well, that's the only one I didn't even actually go. I went to some of the readings, so I can't say. Yeah. But actually, I went to AWP. My store was a bookseller there, but I just went to some of the readings because a lot of them were happening in my neighborhood.
It's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. I'm going to be there. If anyone listening to this is an AWP person, I will be in Tampa, unfortunately, for me, in a week or so. So if you're around, you can come see our booth. You can get Physics of Sorrow. You can get Invented Part. You can get all the 2-month review books. And for now, I guess that's probably it. So thanks for listening, everyone. And we will be back next Monday with part 3 of the Physics of Sorrow.
Don't eat